The sound of breaking glass echoed across the night. Elijah Cole froze, his heart slamming against his ribs. He was alone on the cracked sidewalk, a backpack heavy on his shoulder, his sneakers worn to the bone. The streetlight above him flickered, buzzing like a dying insect. Across the street, the polished towers of Glasstown Academy rose against the dark sky, their windows glowing gold like watchful eyes. This city looked beautiful from a distance. The glass buildings reflected sunsets, the manicured parks bloomed with perfect flowers, and every billboard promised safety, order, and prosperity. But Elijah knew what lived in the shadows: fear. Another crash came from the alley. He tightened his grip on the straps of his backpack. A boy's muffled voice cried out. Elijah crept closer, every step pulling him deeper into the dark cut of the alley between the bakery and the dry cleaner. That's when he saw them. Two men in black tactical uniforms pinned a teenager against the wall. The boy's head jerked violently as one officer's fist sank into his gut. The other wrenched his arm behind his back until his shoulder twisted at an unnatural angle. Elijah's stomach dropped. The boy was Jamal, his best friend. "Elijah, run," Jamal gasped. His eyes wide, his face slick with blood. The taller officer glanced over his shoulder, eyes catching Elijah in the shadows. His face was covered by a black mask, but the insignia on his chest was clear. Aegis Patrol. Elijah stumbled back, his mind screaming at him to move, but his legs felt locked in place. Aegis wasn't like the regular police. They didn't carry badges. They carried orders. They answered only to the city council, the same billionaires who sat in marble mansions and waved from parade floats. The taller officer growled into his radio. "Package secured. Transport needed at dock point 3. Jamal's scream ripped through the alley, raw and desperate. Elijah's throat closed. His body finally obeyed and he bolted down the street. He didn't stop running until the glittering towers disappeared behind him, and the cracked pavement of his neighborhood swallowed his steps. At 6:30 a.m., Elijah sat at the chipped kitchen table in their tiny apartment, staring at the half-eaten piece of toast on his plate. His mother, Mariana Alvarez, moved around the cramped kitchen in her faded scrubs, her hair pulled into a bun, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Elijah didn't answer. His mind replayed Jamal's face in the alley, the sound of bones straining under pressure, the cold command in the officer's voice. Was it another patrol? Mariana asked, glancing at him, her dark eyes sharp with worry. Elijah swallowed hard. "Yeah." Mariana's lips pressed into a thin line. She had lived in Glasstown long enough to know better than to ask for details. Aegis Patrol was everywhere and their reach was long. Even words at a breakfast table could find ears they weren't meant for. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Stay focused on school, mijo. You've worked too hard to throw it away now. Keep your head down." Elijah wanted to tell her the truth, that Jamal was gone, taken into the shadows, but the words felt too dangerous to speak aloud. Instead, he forced a nod, grabbed his backpack, and left for Glasstown Academy. The school gates gleamed like steel teeth under the morning sun. Security cameras followed every student who entered, their red lights blinking rhythmically. Elijah adjusted his blazer and stepped inside, trying to blend into the sea of tailored uniforms. Inside, the marble hallways buzzed with voices. Screens on the walls flashed the Academy's motto, excellence, honor, leadership. To Elijah, it all felt like theater. "Elijah." A voice called. He turned. Rebecca Halstead, daughter of Glasstown's mayor, waved him over. She had glossy blonde hair, a perfect smile, and an entourage of friends who laughed too loudly at her jokes. "You're late," she teased, though her tone carried no warmth. "Big exam today. Did you study?" Elijah forced a small smile. "All night." Rebecca's eyes flicked to his worn shoes, the frayed strap of his backpack. The corner of her mouth lifted in a smirk. "Of course you did." Then she turned back to her friends, dismissing him like a shadow. Elijah clenched his jaw. He was here on scholarship, a token reminder that Glasstown Academy was inclusive. But he knew the truth. The elites never let him forget he didn't belong. As he slid into his seat in history class, he pulled out his notebook. On the margin of the first page, in shaky handwriting, he scribbled, "Detective Rowan Blake across town." Detective Rowan Blake sat in his unmarked car outside Dock Point 3. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but his eyes hadn't left the chain-link gate at the edge of the forest. He'd been following whispers for months, whispers of teenagers disappearing after encounters with Aegis Patrol. Officially, the police claimed the kids had run away or joined gangs. Unofficially, Rowan knew the truth. The gate creaked open. 2 Aegis trucks rolled out, their windows blacked, their tires coated in mud. Rowan snapped photos with his camera, his pulse quickening. He zoomed in. Through a crack in the tarp covering one of the trucks, he saw movement. A hand, small, desperate. Rowan lowered the camera, bile rising in his throat. He'd seen a lot in 15 years on the force, but this was different. This wasn't policing. This was war against their own children. He started his car and pulled away, his mind racing. He couldn't take this to his captain, not when half the department was in Aegis's pocket. If he wanted answers, he'd have to go alone. That evening, Elijah retraced his steps to the alley where Jamal had been taken. The shadows were deeper now, the smell of rotting garbage sharp in the air. He crouched low, scanning the ground. There, a sneaker. Jamal's. The white leather was scuffed, one lace torn clean off. Elijah's chest tightened. He picked it up with trembling hands, holding it like a piece of evidence, like a lifeline. A sudden rustle made him spin around. The alley was empty, but his skin prickled. He was being watched. Aegis Patrol's symbol, a black shield, was spray-painted on the brick wall. Below it, fresh words had been scrawled in white paint, "Stay in your place." Elijah backed away, clutching Jamal's shoe to his chest. His mind whirled, but one thought burned clear. This city wasn't glass. It was a cage, and tonight the bars had closed in. She thought missing her flight was the worst thing that could happen that day. She had no idea it would become the best decision of her life. But first, it would nearly destroy everything she had left. Detroit Metro Airport, Gate A7. The boarding door is about to slam shut. Keisha Washington clutches her last hope. A boarding pass bought with her final $850. This isn't just any flight. This is her daughter's future, her escape from poverty, her one shot at a nursing scholarship that could change everything. But then she hears it. An elderly woman struggling with her oxygen machine. Security approaching. The gate agent threatened to remove her from the flight. What Kesha didn't know was that helping this frail old woman would cost her everything she owned, her home, her savings, even her daughter's health, before revealing the most shocking truth of her life. Because that woman, she wasn't just any passenger. She owned the entire airline. But to understand why missing this flight felt like losing her last lifeline, you need to see how desperate Kesha's situation really was. Let me take you back 3 weeks. Kesha Washington, 34 years old, stands in the bathroom of Sunrise Manor Nursing Home at 6 a.m. Her reflection stares back exhausted eyes, hands already aching from 12-hour shifts that pay just $14 an hour. She splashes cold water on her face and whispers the same prayer she said every morning for 2 years. "Mama, if you're watching, please help me find a way out." Because Kesha is drowning, not in water but in bills that multiply faster than her paychecks. The rent notice taped to her apartment door reads $1,200 past due for 2 months. That's $2,400 she doesn't have. The red letters spelling EVICTON might as well be written in her daughter's tears. Her cramped one-bedroom apartment in Detroit's East Side tells the story of a woman fighting an impossible battle. Medical bills from 8-year-old Jasmine's asthma attacks cover the kitchen table like fallen leaves. 3 hours, 847 in collections. Each envelope is a reminder that her daughter's breathing comes with a price tag she can't afford. Credit cards maxed out at their $5,000 limits. Credit score sitting at 487, a number that makes landlords hang up before she finishes speaking. Her wallet holds exactly $4,367. The food stamps ran out 12 days ago. Last night, Jasmine asked the question that broke Kesha's heart in half. "Mama, why do we eat cereal for dinner again?" "Because cereal costs $2.99. A real dinner costs $15. Kesha works 50-plus hours a week at Sunrise Manor, but it's never enough. The nursing home is understaffed, underfunded, and overflowing with residents who deserve better care than the system provides. She changes bed sheets, administers medications, holds hands with lonely elderly patients who remind her of her own grandmother. But at night, when Jasmine is asleep, Kesha sits in their tiny bathroom and cries silently into a towel. Not because she's ungrateful for her job, but because she knows she's capable of more. She dreams of being a registered nurse, of making real money, of giving Jasmine the life she deserves. The problem is nursing school costs $40,000. Might as well be $4 million. That's when the letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope, expensive paper, the Seattle Advanced Nursing Institute scholarship program, full tuition coverage, plus a $2,000 monthly stipend for living expenses. 12 recipients chosen nationwide based on a single essay. How has caring for others shaped your purpose? Kesha wrote about her grandmother, who raised her after her parents died in a car accident. About learning to give insulin shots when she was 12. About holding her grandmother's hand as cancer stole her breath, one labored gasp at a time. Nursing isn't just my career choice, she wrote. It's my calling. It's the way I honor every person who showed me what real care looks like. 2 weeks later, the phone call came. She was one of 12 finalists. Interview required in Seattle, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Kesha stared at her bank balance. $853 is the price of a last-minute flight to Seattle. $850 non-refundable. She bought the ticket with shaking hands. Then came the outfit. You can't interview for a scholarship wearing your nursing home scrubs. She borrowed $200 from Mrs. Rodriguez next door, promising to pay it back from her first scholarship stipend check. A simple black blazer, white blouse, and dress pants from the outlet mall. Professional enough to look the part, affordable enough not to completely destroy her. Jasmine helped her practice interview answers while they shared a box of mac and cheese for dinner. Why do you want to be a nurse, Mama? Because every person deserves to be seen, heard, and cared for with dignity. Baby, that's a good answer. Mama, you're going to win, as if life were that simple. Mrs. Carter from down the hall agreed to watch Jasmine for $50. $50 Keisha promised to pay, but didn't have. Another debt, another person. She'd have to disappoint. The anxiety attack started 3 days before the flight. Heart racing at 3 a.m. Hands sweating during medication rounds. The weight of knowing this was it. This was her family's one shot at escaping the cycle that had trapped her mother, her grandmother, and generations before them. Because Jasmine was already showing signs, coming home from school asking why they couldn't afford the field trip to the science museum. Why did her shoes have holes while other kids wore new sneakers? Why did Mama work so much but they still couldn't buy the inhaler refill that cost $180? That inhaler sat expired in their medicine cabinet. A ticking time bomb waiting for Jasmine's next asthma attack. In her wallet, Kesha carries 2 things that keep her going. A faded photo of her grandmother in her nursing uniform from 1967, and a crayon drawing Jasmine made last month. A stick figure in scrubs with a heart over her chest. And the words Mama the Helper written in crooked letters. The vintage leather travel bag sitting by their front door belonged to her grandmother. The only valuable thing left after years of selling everything else for bill money. But Kesha couldn't sell this. It held too many memories of the woman who taught her that caring for others was the highest calling. She packed that bag with interview clothes, a dream, and every last bit of hope she had left. Tomorrow. She will carry it onto a plane to Seattle if she could just make it that far. Standing at that gate, Kesha was about to board the flight that could save her family when she heard something that would test everything she believed about doing the right thing. Detroit Metro Airport, Gate A7, 7:15 a.m. The boarding announcement crackled through the speakers. Flight 247 to Seattle. Now boarding Group C, please have your boarding passes ready. Kesha's hands shake as she checks her boarding pass for the 10th time in 2 minutes. Group C, that's her. Her heart pounds so hard she can feel it in her throat. This is really happening. In 3 hours, she'll be in Seattle. In 2 hours after that, she'll be sitting across from the scholarship committee fighting for her daughter's future. She whispers a prayer under her breath. Please let this work out. Please let everything be okay. The gate area buzzes with typical airport chaos. Business travelers typing frantically on laptops. Families juggling crying babies and overstead carry-ons. The smell of coffee and anxiety filling the air. Outside the massive windows, storm clouds gather like dark omens. The weather report this morning wasn't promising. Severe thunderstorms rolling across the Midwest. But her flight is on time, still on time. That's when she notices her. An elderly woman, maybe 75, sitting 3 seats away from the boarding line. She's dressed elegantly, a cream-colored linen suit that probably cost more than Kesha makes in a month. Pearl earrings that catch the fluorescent light. Her silver hair is styled perfectly, not a strand out of place. But something's wrong. The woman is fumbling with a small device connected to thin plastic tubing that runs to her nose. A portable oxygen concentrator. The machine is beeping, not the steady, reassuring beep-off normal operation. Sharp, urgent beeps that make Kesha's nursing instincts kick into overdrive. "Ma'am, we need to resolve this situation immediately." A gate agent approaches the elderly woman, his voice sharp with impatience. "If your medical device is malfunctioning, you cannot board this aircraft." The woman looks up and Kesha sees something that breaks her heart. Dignity under pressure. The kind of quiet grace her grandmother had when the world was falling apart around her. "Please," the woman says, her voice refined but strained. "I have a medical appointment in Seattle that I simply cannot miss. The machine was working perfectly an hour ago." "Ma'am, I understand, but now boarding Group C," the announcement interrupts. "Group C passengers, please approach the gate." Kesha's stomach flips. That's her group. She needs to get in line now, but the beeping continues. "More urgent now." "Sir, I'm going to need you to call security," the gate agent says into his radio. "We have a medical device situation at gate A7. Other passengers in Group C start lining up. A businessman in an expensive suit checks his watch and sighs loudly. A mother with 2 small children looks annoyed. Everyone wants to board. Everyone wants to get to Seattle before the storms hit. Everyone except Kesha, who can't stop watching this woman struggle. The oxygen concentrator's alarm gets louder. The woman's hand trembles as she tries to press buttons on the device. Kesha recognizes the look in her eyes. It's the same look her patients get when they're trying not to panic, trying not to cause a scene, trying to maintain their dignity while their body betrays them. "Mom, you need to step away from the gate area," the agent continues. "Security will escort you to medical services." "Please," the woman says again. "I'm not having a medical emergency. It's just the machine. If someone could just look at it." "Kesha, no." The footage looped over and over on Elijah's cracked phone screen. Aegis officers in black armor. Teenagers with their hands zip-tied, floodlights bleeding through the trees. Every time Elijah pressed play, his stomach tightened until it felt like a fist sat lodged beneath his ribs. Proof. He had proof. And yet, what good was proof in a city built on lies? He sat across from Detective Rowan Blake in a greasy diner on the edge of downtown. The place smelled of burnt coffee and fried onions. Only a handful of customers sat scattered across booths, their faces hidden behind newspapers or screens. Blake sipped his coffee, studying the footage. His jaw was tight, his eyes heavy. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. "You realize what this means," Blake said finally, sliding the phone back. "They can't deny it now," Elijah whispered. "We show this to the right people, the news—" "No," Blake cut in, his voice low but sharp. "The second you upload that, Aegis will trace the metadata, track the IP. They'll come for you before a single reporter gets to watch." Elijah's shoulders sank. He wanted to argue, but the man was right. Glasstown didn't run on justice. It ran on fear. Blake leaned forward. "You want Jamal back? You want to tear this thing open? Then you need more than shaky footage. You need names. You need documents. You need a smoking gun," Elijah frowned. "And where do we find that?" Blake hesitated. "City Hall." Mariana's doorstep. Mariana Alvarez knew trouble the moment she opened her front door. 2 Aegis officers stood on her porch, their black armor gleaming beneath the streetlights. Their faces were hidden behind tinted visors, but their posture spoke volumes, arrogant, unhurried, like wolves visiting a lamb. "Mrs. Alvarez?" one of them asked. His voice was calm, polite even, but something oily coiled beneath it. "Yes?" she said, gripping the edge of the door. "We've received reports your son Elijah has been associating with undesirable elements." Her heart lurched. She forced her voice steady. "My son goes to school. He studies. He comes home." "That's all." The officer tilted his head. "Of course. Still, you'll understand, we have to ensure our city remains safe. Maybe he mentioned friends who like to wander into restricted areas?" Mariana's throat went dry. She thought of Jamal. She thought of Elijah's late nights. His tired eyes. "I don't know anything," she said. The second officer stepped forward, close enough that she could see her own reflection in his visor. "Be careful, Mrs. Alvarez. Sometimes curiosity runs in the family, and curiosity in Glasstown can be fatal." They turned and walked away, their boots echoing against the pavement. Mariana shut the door, her hands trembling. For a long time, she simply stood there in the quiet apartment, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. Then, without a word, she pulled her son's baby photo off the shelf, clutched it to her chest, and prayed. The academy trap the next morning at Glasstown Academy. Elijah felt eyes on him. Students whispered as he passed through the marble hallways. Some smirked, others looked away. Word traveled fast in the academy, faster than truth could ever catch up. At his locker, a folded note slipped out. Scrawled in jagged handwriting were the words, "Stop, before you end up like him." A photo was taped beneath. Jamal, beaten, kneeling in the dirt, his face turned toward the camera in terror. Elijah's vision blurred. His fists clenched around the paper until it tore. "Problem, Cole?" The voice was mocking, slick. Elijah turned to see Nathaniel Gray, the mayor's son. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, a silver watch that cost more than Elijah's rent. A small crowd of students hovered behind him, waiting for a show. "Looks like your little ghetto buddy got himself in trouble," Nathaniel drawled. "Maybe Aegis should have taken you too." Heat flared in Elijah's chest. He wanted to swing, to smash Nathaniel's perfect face into the marble floor, but he forced himself still. That was what they wanted, an excuse. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice sharp and low. "One day, Nathaniel, all that glass your daddy built is going to shatter. And when it does, I'll be the one holding the hammer." Nathaniel's smirk faltered. Just for a moment. Elijah turned and walked away, the photo burning in his pocket. Breaking point. That night, Blake drove Elijah through the industrial district. The city lights flickered against rusting factories and abandoned warehouses. "City Hall keeps all its records digital," Blake said. "But digital means traceable. Aegis will see us coming before we type the first password. We need a back door," Elijah frowned. "So what's the plan?" Blake's hands tightened on the wheel. "There's a storage facility 2 blocks from the courthouse. Old school, paper records, physical files. They keep the backups there in case of cyber attacks. You get those files, you've got leverage, and you've tried before," Elijah asked. Blake's jaw worked. "I tried. Nearly got myself killed. But maybe with you." He didn't finish the thought. Elijah stared out the window as neon signs blurred past. He thought of Jamal in chains. He thought of his mother's trembling hands. "Then we go tonight," Elijah said. The break-in. The storage facility loomed like a fortress. High fences, cameras on every corner, a guard booth at the gate. Blake killed the headlights and parked 2 streets away. "We've got 1 shot. You stay low, follow my lead. If anything goes wrong, you run. Understand?" Elijah nodded, his pulse quickening. They slipped through the shadows, scaling a section of fence hidden by overgrown ivy. Inside, the air smelled of dust and motor oil. Rows of warehouses stretched into the darkness, their metal doors locked tight. Blake led the way to a smaller building near the center. He produced a set of lockpicks from his coat, his hands steady as he worked the door. "Police training," he muttered when he caught Elijah staring. Not the official kind. The lock clicked open. They slipped inside. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with dates and departments. Blake pulled out a flashlight, the beam cutting across stacks of manila folders. "Help me look," he whispered. "Anything with Aegis, Industrial Council, or detainment." Elijah's fingers trembled as he rifled through files. The smell of paper and ink filled the air. He found invoices, contracts, reports stamped confidential. Each document was another crack in the glass, another glimpse of the machine beneath the city's shining surface. Then Elijah froze. He'd found a ledger, pages filled with names, dates, amounts of money transferred. All under the heading Aegis Patrol, Special Operations. He flipped further. Names of councilmen, business leaders, even the mayor himself, and beneath one column, youth intake numbers, dozens of names. Jamal Richardson among them. Elijah's chest tightened. Jamal wasn't just missing, he was accounted for, catalogued, reduced to a number on a page. "We need this," Elijah whispered, clutching the ledger. "This is it." But before Blake could answer, the sound of boots echoed outside, voices, radios crackling, perimeter secure. "Move in," Blake cursed under his breath. They knew. The door burst open. Floodlights cut through the darkness. Aegis officers stormed in, weapons raised, hands where we can see them. Elijah's heart exploded in panic. He clutched the ledger tight as Blake shoved him toward the back window. "Go!" Blake hissed. "Run!" "But you, run!" Elijah dove through the window as glass shattered around him. He hit the ground hard, clutching the ledger to his chest, and sprinted into the night as gunfire erupted behind him. The choice hours later, Elijah crouched in a drainage tunnel beneath the city, his body aching, his lungs raw. The ledger lay open on his lap, its pages stained with dirt and blood. Blake hadn't followed. He didn't know if the detective was alive, captured, or worse, but he had the proof. Names, numbers, evidence that could burn Glasstown to the ground. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the camera. He could take pictures, upload them, blast the truth to the world. But then he remembered Blake's warning. Uploading meant exposure. Exposure meant they'd come for him and his mother before anyone could act. His hands shook as he closed the ledger. Not yet. Not until he had a plan. Not until he could strike where it would hurt most. For now, he would keep the truth in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to break the glass. And when that moment came, Glasstown would bleed. Glasstown's Civic Center glittered like a jewel in the heart of the city. The building rose 30 stories high, its glass facade shimmering beneath spotlights that painted the night sky in silver beams. Red carpet stretched across marble steps, and luxury cars lined the street. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above a sea of gowns and tuxedos. Waiters in white gloves floated through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne. It was the night of the Industrial Council Gala, the annual celebration where the city's billionaires toasted themselves for public service. The mayor would give speeches. Cameras would roll, and every station in Glasstown would broadcast the spectacle. To most, it was the height of glamour. To Elijah, it was the belly of the beast. The shadow at the edge. He stood across the street in the shadows of a closed florist shop, his hoodie pulled tight, the ledger tucked inside his backpack. His clothes were dirty from nights hiding in tunnels. His face carried the exhaustion of weeks of running. Through the glass walls of the Civic Center, he saw the people who had built Glasstown's machine. Men in tailored suits, women dripping diamonds, council members clinking glasses. They smiled, laughed, and traded jokes, as though teenagers weren't chained in camps less than 5 miles away. Elijah's hand tightened on the strap of his backpack. His mother's words echoed in his head. This city is a glass tower built on bones. Tonight, he would prove her right. A voice broke through his thoughts. "You're late." Elijah spun. Detective Rowan Blake leaned against the alley wall, bruised but alive. His coat was torn, his left arm bandaged. "You made it," Elijah breathed. Relief surged through him. "Barely," Blake said. "Aegis is onto us. They've tightened patrols. But the gala. This is your shot." Cameras, press, every big name in the city under one roof. "You want to hit them, you do it here." Elijah hesitated. "What if they kill me before I even step inside?" Blake's eyes hardened. "They probably will. But you've got something stronger than their guns, kid. You've got truth. And truth, if it's loud enough, can't be buried." For a long moment, Elijah stood silent, watching the Civic Center glow like a beacon. Then he nodded. "Let's make it loud." Infiltration Blake handed him a stolen catering uniform stuffed in a black duffel. Elijah slipped into the Civic Center through a service entrance, blending in with a stream of waiters carrying trays of food. His heart thudded as he passed security checkpoints. Every guard looked like an Aegis officer beneath their crisp suits. Eyes sharp, hands ready. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched, moving like he belonged. Inside, the ballroom pulsed with music and laughter. Elijah slipped along the edges, weaving through curtains and serving tables. His phone was ready in his pocket, the camera set to live stream. Then the lights dimmed. The mayor stepped onto the stage. His tuxedo gleamed under the chandeliers, his smile practiced and warm. Cameras turned toward him as he raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor began, "tonight we celebrate not just our city's prosperity, but its safety. Because of the dedication of our industrial council and the tireless work of Aegis Patrol, Glasstown remains the safest city in the nation." Applause thundered through the hall. Elijah's jaw tightened. His fingers itched against his phone. The mayor continued, "Together we've built a city of hope, a city of lies." The word tore through the air like a blade. The crowd froze. Heads turned. Cameras swung. Elijah had climbed onto a serving table. Hoodie stripped off. Uniform discarded. The ledger was clutched in his hands. His chest heaved, his voice raw but steady. "You built this city on chains," he shouted. "You call it safety? My best friend Jamal Richardson is locked in your camps. You drag kids into the woods and you bury them alive while you drink champagne." Gasps rippled across the room. Murmurs rose like waves. Guards surged forward, but Elijah lifted his phone high, its red light glowing. "I'm live streaming," he shouted. "Everyone's watching! The world will see what you've done." The room erupted. Guests shouted over one another. Some pulled out their own phones, recording. Others screamed at security to silence him. The mayor's smile faltered, his mask cracking. "Turn it off," he hissed to his guards. "Now!" the struggled two guards lunged. Elijah swung the ledger like a weapon, pages fluttering. "Here's the proof," he cried. "Names, dates, numbers. You all signed it. You paid for Aegis to steal our children." He managed to toss the ledger across the floor. It skidded beneath the feet of a reporter from Channel 7, who bent instinctively to pick it up. Cameras flashed. Elijah felt hands clamp around his arms. He struggled, shouting until his voice broke. "Look inside. Look at the names. You can't hide anymore." The guards dragged him from the table. Wine glasses shattered. Guests screamed. Phones rose into the air, dozens of them filming as Elijah kicked and thrashed. "Let him speak!" Someone yelled from the crowd. "He's a liar!" Another shouted back. Elijah caught sight of Blake in the back, pushing through the chaos. The detective's eyes met his for one brief, burning second. Then Elijah was hauled through the ballroom doors and into the marble lobby. The silence, the guards slammed him against the wall. His head cracked against the marble, stars bursting in his vision. One leaned close, visor reflecting Elijah's terrified face. "You just signed your death warrant, kid." But then, the muffled sound of shouting from inside the ballroom. The crowd's roar was rising, chaotic and unstoppable. Phones, cameras, reporters. The silence Aegis thrived on was gone. The guard's radio crackled. "We've got a problem. Too many feeds. Too many eyes. We can't contain this." Elijah spat blood, forcing a smile. Too late. Everyone saw. The guard's fist clenched. For a moment, Elijah thought he would be struck down then and there. But instead, the officer swore under his breath and dragged him toward a side exit. Blake appeared from the shadows, gun drawn. "Let him go." The guards froze. Blake's voice was iron. "The kid walks or I put a hole in your skull. Cameras are still rolling in there. You make him vanish now, and Glasstown burns faster than you can breathe." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the guards released Elijah. Blake caught his arm, steadying him. "We have to move, now!" The escape. They burst into the night, slipping into an alley as sirens wailed across the city. Police cars sped toward the Civic Center, red and blue lights reflecting in the glass walls. Elijah's phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications flooded the screen. Thousands of viewers. Comments exploding. Hashtags climbing. Glasstown camps. Where is Jamal A. Aegis exposed? The live stream had worked. The truth was out. Blake glanced over Elijah's shoulder at the screen. "You did it, kid." But Elijah's chest tightened. "No, not yet. Jamal's still in there. My mom's still in danger. This is just the beginning." Blake nodded grimly. "Then we fight harder." In the distance, helicopters cut across the skyline. The city was awake now. The glass tower had cracked. and the cracks were spreading. Behind closed doors, inside the Civic Center, the Industrial Council retreated to a private chamber. The mayor slammed the ledger down on the table, his face pale. "This cannot go public," he barked. One councilwoman trembled as she flipped through the pages. "It already is public. The boy live-streamed everything. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. International reporters, human rights organizations." "Shut up!" The mayor roared. Silence fell. He leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. "Then we double down. We control the narrative. He's a radical, a terrorist. We flood the airwaves with our story before he spreads further. And as for him," he glanced toward the door where Aegis officers stood at attention. "Find him, kill him, and anyone who stands with him." The spark hours later, Elijah and Blake crouched in the dark of a safe house on the outskirts of town. Elijah's hands still shook, adrenaline surging through his veins. The live stream replayed on his phone. His own voice echoed back at him. "You built this city on chains." Blake watched the screen, his face unreadable. Finally he said, "There's no going back now." "I don't want to go back," Elijah whispered. His voice was hoarse but steady. "I want to tear it all down." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll need allies, more than just a scared kid and a broken cop." Elijah nodded slowly. "Then let's find them, before Aegis finds us." Outside, sirens wailed across Glasstown. The city shimmered in the distance, its towers glowing like fractured glass. And for the first time, Elijah felt it. The machine was trembling. The cracks were spreading. The city looked different now. From the top floor of Glasstown Academy, Elijah stared out the window, past the manicured courtyards and glistening towers, to where the streets bent into shadow. He used to think the glass walls of the city shone like hope. Now they felt like prison bars, polished, sharp, unbreakable. Everywhere he looked, Aegis Patrol loomed larger. Drones buzzed over intersections. Tactical vans idled at corners. The council had plastered billboards across downtown. "Aegis protects you. Obey for your safety." But Elijah knew what they really meant. Obey, or disappear. He hadn't slept in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jamal's sneaker, the torn lace, the scream that had been cut short in the alley. He carried the shoe in his backpack now, hidden between books. It wasn't just evidence, it was a promise. The announcement at midday, all students were herded into the academy auditorium. The space shimmered with chandeliers and banners, the air humming with forced excitement. The headmaster strode across the stage, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the wood. "Students of Glasstown Academy," he began, his voice amplified by hidden speakers. "Today marks the dawn of a new partnership. Aegis Patrol will be extending its protective services to our campus. This will ensure your safety, your discipline, and your excellence." The doors at the back opened. A squad of Aegis officers marched in, helmets glinting, rifles slung across their chests. The students whispered nervously, the sound like insects scuttling. Elijah's stomach twisted. "These men and women are here for you," the headmaster continued. "Remember, order creates opportunity. Compliance ensures success." Rebecca Holstead clapped loudly from the front row, flashing a perfect smile. A few students followed her lead, but most sat frozen, their eyes wide with unease. Elijah clenched his fists in his lap. His chest burned with rage, but his mind whispered his mother's words. "Keep your head down. Rowan's betrayal across town." Detective Rowan Blake stepped into the precinct. The familiar smell of burnt coffee and stale paper hit him like a wave. But something was off. Too many eyes followed him as he walked toward his desk. "Blake." Captain Hensley stood at the end of the hall, arms crossed, his bulk blocking the light from the window. His face was tight, unreadable. "In my office," he said. Rowan followed. The blinds were drawn. The air was heavy. "You've been sniffing around Dock Point," Hensley said flatly. Rowan's pulse quickened. He forced his voice steady. "Kids are disappearing. Aegis is running black sites. You know it as well as I do." Hensley's jaw flexed. Then, without warning, he opened a drawer and tossed something onto the desk. Rowan's stomach dropped. His camera, the one he'd hidden in his car. The one with photos of Aegis trucks, of hands reaching through tarps. You think we don't watch our own? Hensley's voice was low, dangerous. You're out of your depth, Blake. You're going to drop this investigation, or you're going to end up like those kids. Rowan's mouth went dry. So that's it? We just let them vanish? Hensley leaned forward, his eyes cold. You want to survive? Keep your badge. Keep your mouth shut. Rowan stared at him, bile rising in his throat. He realized then that the department wasn't compromised. It was owned. Every file, every desk, every badge was just another cog in the council's machine. As he walked out of the office, his badge suddenly felt like a shackle on his chest, Elijah's spark that night. Elijah sat in his bedroom, the sneaker on his desk beside a stack of schoolbooks. The hum of drones outside seeped through the cracked window. His mother had already gone to her night shift at the hospital. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Do you want to find him? Elijah's breath caught. His fingers hovered over the screen. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Friday midnight, East Subway Tunnel, come alone. Elijah's heart pounded. His first thought was trap. His second was Jamal. He typed back, how do I know this is real? A pause. Then another message, white sneaker, torn lace. Elijah stared at the shoe on his desk, his hands trembling. Whoever this was, they knew. Aegis expands. By the end of the week, Aegis patrols doubled. Metal scanners appeared at subway stations. Curfews were announced. All citizens indoors by 9 p.m. on the news. Mayor Halstead stood in front of cameras, her smile wide. Her words crisp. Glasstown is a shining beacon in a dangerous world. But be assured, we will protect you. Aegis is not your enemy. They are your guardians. Elijah's mother watched the broadcast in silence, her lips pressed thin. Guardians don't take children, she whispered. Elijah turned away, because he couldn't bear the fear in her voice. The meeting midnight came fast. Elijah slipped from the apartment, Jamal's sneaker hidden in his backpack. The streets were silent, the curfew making the city feel like a ghost town. He ducked into the subway entrance, its gates chained shut. Squeezing through a gap, he crept into the dark tunnel, the smell of rust and oil thick in the air. Over here. The voice was low, urgent. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. A girl, maybe 17, with close-cropped hair dyed electric blue. Her hoodie was torn, her sneakers scuffed. Her eyes burned with defiance. I'm Kaya, she said. You're Elijah. Elijah hesitated. How do you know me? We watch. You saw what they did to your friend. We need people like you. We? Kaya tilted her head. You'll see. She led him deeper into the tunnel, past broken tracks and collapsed walls, until they reached a metal door half hidden by debris. She knocked 3 times. It creaked open. Inside, Elijah's breath caught. Dozens of kids filled the room, some huddled in groups, others poring over maps and scavenged radios. They were younger than him, older than him, every shade of skin, every accent of Glasstown. Their eyes held the same fire, survival. On the far wall, painted in dripping red letters, were the words, "The glass will break." Kaya smirked at Elijah's wide eyes. Welcome to the underground. Rowan's choice. Meanwhile, Rowan sat in his dark apartment, his badge on the table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside it. His phone buzzed, a message, no name, just coordinates .doc.3. Rowan closed his eyes. He knew what this meant. If he went, he was finished as a cop. If he stayed, he was finished as a man. He grabbed his gun, his jacket, and left. Breaking Point Elijah sat among the underground, listening as Kaya explained. They take kids like Jamal to the docks. Some come back? Most don't. The council says they're criminals, but they're not. They're us. Why? Elijah whispered. Kaya's face hardened. Because fear is control, and control is profit. A boy across the room added, they sell us, to factories outside the walls. Labor camps. Some worse. Elijah's stomach turned. He thought of Jamal's laugh, the way they'd raced bikes down cracked sidewalks. He couldn't picture him in chains. He wouldn't. Kaya leaned closer. You want to find him? You fight with us. You help us break the glass. Elijah looked at the red letters on the wall, at the faces watching him, at the sneaker in his bag. For the first time since Jamal was taken, his fear burned into something sharper. Resolve. I'm in, he said. And just like that, the first crack splintered through Glasstown. The night the city cracked began with silence. For years, Glasstown's towers gleamed with untouchable perfection, their mirrored walls hiding the fear beneath. But that night, beneath the streets, in tunnels scarred by rust and graffiti, a storm gathered. Elijah stood in the center of the underground's hideout, his backpack slung tight, Jamal's sneaker tucked inside like a relic. Around him, dozens of kids leaned forward, their eyes glowing in the dim light of scavenged lamps. Maps spread across a broken table, marked with red lines and circles. Kaya tapped one with her finger. Dock Point 3, that's where the vans unload. Every Friday, just before dawn. If we want to find Jamal, or any of the others, we hit them there. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A boy with scars on his cheek shook his head. We don't have weapons. We don't have numbers. We don't need numbers, Kaya shot back. We need proof, photos, footage, evidence that they can't bury under lies. If we show the city what Aegis really is, the glass will shatter. Elijah clenched his fists. He remembered Jamal's scream in the alley, the mask of the officer, the crushing helplessness. Then let's do it, he said. His voice wavered, but the room quieted. Dozens of eyes turned to him. He swallowed. They already think we're nothing. That makes us dangerous. They don't see us coming, Kaya grinned. Exactly. Across the city, Rowan crouched in the shadows of Dock Point 3. His camera was gone, but he'd brought something else, a recorder wired into his jacket pocket. The gate screeched open. 2 Aegis trucks rolled inside, their engines rumbling like beasts. Rowan pressed himself tighter against the concrete wall, heart hammering. The first truck parked. An officer yanked open the back. Light spilled across a row of kids chained together, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. Rowan's breath caught. Rage boiled up, hot and bitter. He wanted to storm forward, gun drawn, but that would save no one. He needed the city to see this. He hit record. A voice barked orders. Move them inside. Processing starts now. Rowan's blood turned cold. Processing. He didn't know exactly what that meant, but he knew it wasn't freedom. He slipped away into the night, every step heavier than the last. By morning, his life as a cop would be over. But his life as a man who still believed in justice, maybe that was just beginning. Back in the tunnels, the underground moved like ants preparing for war. Old radios crackled. Batteries were scavenged. Cameras were wired together from stolen phones. Kaya walked Elijah through it all. We'll split into 3 groups. One distracts the patrols at the south gate. Another films everything. The third, she glanced at him. You and me. We get the kids out. Elijah's throat tightened. And if we don't? Kaya didn't blink. Then we go down fighting. For a long moment, Elijah just stared at her. She was younger than he was, but her eyes carried the weight of a general. He wondered how many friends she'd already lost. He nodded. I'm with you. At the hospital, Elijah's mother, Mariana, worked through another endless night of fluorescent lights and weary faces. But when she passed the security office, she froze. On the monitor, grainy footage showed her son slipping into the subway tunnels at midnight, her chest constricted. She pressed a hand to the glass, whispering his name. She knew then Elijah was in this fight, whether she liked it or not. And deep down, she knew she couldn't stop him. Friday, just before dawn, Dock Point 3 hummed with activity. Floodlights glared against the fog. Aegis trucks rumbled in, their black paint gleaming. From the shadows of a nearby rooftop, Elijah's heart pounded. Kaya crouched beside him, her eyes locked on the gate. Behind them, kids from the underground readied cameras, lenses glowing faintly red. Remember, Kaya whispered, we're ghosts. In and out. Below, the first van opened. The sight made Elijah's stomach churn. Kids stumbled out, wrists bound, eyes blank with terror. Jamal wasn't there, but Elijah knew he could be in the next van, or the one after. Kaya gave a sharp nod. The underground moved. One group lit a fire at the south fence. Patrols rushed toward it, shouting. Another group scrambled up poles, cameras rolling, recording every second. Now, Kaya hissed. They vaulted the fence, hitting the ground hard. Elijah's lungs burned as they sprinted to the trucks. An officer turned, too slow. Kaya slammed a brick into his helmet, and he dropped. Elijah yanked open the truck door. Inside, half a dozen kids blinked at him, dazed. One girl whispered, "Are you real?" Elijah's hand shook as he cut the ties on their wrists. "Run," he urged. "Get to the tunnels." The ground shook. Gunfire cracked. Floodlights swung. Aegis had noticed. From the shadows, Rowan raised his gun. His badge was still clipped to his belt, but for the first time it felt like dead weight. He aimed and fired, dropping an Aegis officer before the man could reach Elijah. "Move, kid." Rowan barked. Elijah spun, stunned. "Who? No time. Get them out." Rowan shouted, firing again. Kaya grabbed Elijah's arm. "Don't argue. He's on our side." For a heartbeat, Elijah's mind reeled. A cop, helping them? But there was no time to question. They dragged the kids free. One boy stumbled, Elijah catching him just as bullets sparked against the truck. Rowan shouted into the chaos, "I've got the north gate! Go! Across the yard." The underground's cameras rolled. Every chain, every strike, every terrified child was caught in shaky, desperate footage. The kids filming risked their lives, ducking behind crates, diving under floodlights, but they never stopped recording. And then came the moment that would break the city. An officer ripped off his helmet to bark orders. His face was clear. He wasn't some nameless enforcer. He was Councillor Vance's nephew, a golden boy of Glasstown's ruling family. The underground got it all. The air was a storm of gunfire and shouts. Elijah and Kaya sprinted toward the fence, kids clinging to their arms. A bullet whistled past Elijah's ear. His chest heaved, his legs burned. They reached the wall. Kaya boosted the first child over, then another. Elijah shoved Jamal's sneaker into the hands of a trembling boy. "Take it. If I don't make it, give this to my mom." The boy stared, wide-eyed, then nodded. "Go!" Elijah roared. Suddenly, a voice thundered across the yard. "Enough!" A figure stepped from the floodlights. Mayor Halstead herself, flanked by armored guards. Her blonde hair gleamed like a crown, her voice sharp as glass. "These are not children," she declared. "They are traitors, criminals. Anyone aiding them will be punished." Elijah's blood boiled. He shouted back, his voice raw and breaking. "We're not criminals! We're your city! And the world will see what you've done." Halstead's eyes narrowed. But then from the rooftops came a new sound. Cheers, civilians, ordinary people. Drawn by the fire, the chaos. The cameras streaming live through hijacked signals. For the first time, the truth wasn't buried. It was everywhere. The glass had cracked. A gunshot rang out. Rowan tackled Elijah to the ground, the bullet sparking off the truck behind them. Kaya screamed for everyone to move. In the chaos, dozens of kids spilled into the streets, guided by the underground. Civilians joined, pulling them into doorways, shielding them, shouting at patrols to back off. The city was awake now, and it was angry. Halstead's voice was lost in the uproar. Her perfect image flickered on giant billboards. Live feeds of children in chains, officers beating them, the council's lies unraveling in real time. Glasstown was no longer untouchable. It was bleeding. By dawn, the underground was scattered across the city, hiding in basements, alleys, and abandoned buildings. But they were no longer invisible. Every phone buzzed with footage. Every screen showed the truth. Elijah sat in a dark room, his chest aching, his hands still shaking. Jamal was still missing, but the fight had begun. He pulled the sneaker from his bag, pressing it to his heart. "We'll find you," he whispered. "I swear it." Kaya sat beside him, her face bruised but her eyes alight. "This is just the beginning." Rowan leaned in the doorway, his badge gone, his gun still at his side. "They won't stop. They'll hit harder now." Elijah looked up at him, fire in his eyes. "Then so will we." And in that dim room, with the city above them roaring awake, a movement was born. Not just rebellion, revolution.